Some people pick the strangest battles. You'd think in a neighborhood where safety, technology, and innovation were prioritized, everyone would appreciate the systems keeping them secure. But not everyone thinks that way. In fact, one resident, often described as a textbook HOA Karen, decided to make it her mission to fight against something she didn't even understand. She didn't just complain, she didn't just send passive-aggressive letters. No, she went further. She actually took matters into her own hands in a way that no one could have predicted by deliberately tampering with something that affected every single homeowner. And when the truth came out, the entire neighborhood was stunned. It all started with solar panels. For most people, solar panels are a symbol of progress. They cut electricity costs, reduce reliance on traditional power, and, for many communities, they're the foundation of shared systems like backup power and security. But for Karen, solar panels weren't progress. In her eyes, they were ugly, unnecessary, and a violation of the so-called aesthetic standards she believed she was personally entitled to enforce. She wasn't content with filing complaints through the proper HOA channels. She wanted immediate action, her action. The problem? She chose the wrong target, because the solar panels she despised so much weren't just feeding power into one house. They were the backbone of the entire neighborhood's security infrastructure. Cameras, streetlights, alarms, and even the gate access system, all of it relied on those panels functioning properly. And instead of realizing that, Karen decided to grab a bucket of paint and try to solve the problem herself. Now, imagine being so obsessed with controlling a neighborhood's look that you'd sabotage a power source keeping your own property safe. Imagine being so blinded by pettiness that you couldn't see the bigger picture, literally. Karen didn't imagine the consequences, because in her mind, there would be none. She thought no one would notice, that she'd done the community a favor by covering up what she saw as an eyesore. But within hours, everything started to unravel. Cameras went offline. Security lights failed. The front gate malfunctioned. And the HOA members, who once might have tolerated her endless complaints, suddenly had a real crisis on their hands, with one obvious suspect. And when the neighborhood discovered the connection between the panels and the security system, the outrage was immediate. This wasn't a matter of paint anymore. This was vandalism. It was sabotage. And worst of all, it endangered everyone. People felt unsafe, vulnerable, and furious that someone in their own community would take such reckless action. Karen thought she was enforcing her version of neighborhood standards. Instead, she exposed herself as the very reason those standards, and the systems behind them, were needed in the first place. The solar panels were installed years earlier as part of a long-term HOA plan to modernize the neighborhood. The community had voted on it, approved the funding, and agreed that the panels, positioned on select rooftops and common areas, would cut costs while ensuring reliable backup power for essentials like streetlights and surveillance. The system wasn't just efficient, it was cost-saving. Residents saw their HOA dues reduced because energy bills dropped. Most people were happy. Most people, but not Karen. From the very first day the panels appeared, she called them shiny black blotches and a disgrace to the neighborhood's charm. She sent endless emails to the HOA board claiming they ruined property values. No one agreed with her because homes were actually worth more thanks to the modern upgrades. But Karen couldn't stand the idea of losing an argument, and she certainly couldn't stand not getting her way. For months, she escalated. She'd corner neighbors during walks, complain about reflections from the panels, and even claimed they were unsafe. Nothing worked. The HOA reminded her the installation had been a community decision, voted on and legally binding. That should have been the end of it. But Karen doesn't stop. She waits, she stews, and eventually she lashes out. One morning, when most residents were at work, Karen decided to fix the problem herself. She carried ladders, paint, and supplies. She climbed up and began coating the surface of the panels with thick, gray paint, muttering that she was restoring the neighborhood's proper look. To her, it was just paint, but in reality, she had destroyed the ability of the panels to absorb sunlight. It didn't take long for consequences to hit. That very evening, residents noticed security cameras going offline. The gate began stalling. Lights along walking paths didn't come on. At first, some thought it was a glitch. But when multiple homeowners complained, the HOA called in the maintenance team. The inspection revealed the panels had been tampered with, and not just tampered, but deliberately vandalized. The HOA president immediately notified the community that repairs would cost thousands, and worse. Until they were fixed, the entire neighborhood was at risk. Fear spread quickly. Parents worried about kids playing outside without cameras working. Elderly residents felt unsafe with darkened streets. Packages went missing from porches. Everyone demanded answers. It didn't take long to trace the act back to Karen. After all, she had been the loudest critic of the panels, and security footage from the few remaining cameras still functioning caught glimpses of her climbing with a paint bucket. When confronted, Karen tried to spin the story. She said she was doing what everyone else was too scared to do. She insisted she was protecting property values. But no one was buying it. The HOA filed an official complaint, and homeowners demanded she cover the repair costs. Thousands of dollars were billed directly to her. And because the security system had been disabled during her act, the HOA lawyer pointed out she could also be held liable for any incidents that happened while the system was down. That meant thefts, trespassing, even accidents on poorly lit streets could trace back to her decision. Karen's response: she tried to claim ignorance, that she didn't know the panels were connected to the security system. But that excuse only made things worse. If anything, it proved she had no idea what she was talking about, yet still took reckless action. Neighbors who once tolerated her behavior now avoided her entirely. She wasn't just that difficult lady anymore. She was the reason their neighborhood had been left exposed. In the end, the HOA took strict action. Karen was fined, forced to pay restitution, and warned that any further interference with community property could lead to legal removal from the association. She went from demanding control of the neighborhood to becoming its cautionary tale. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Karen, who claimed to care about appearances and safety, had been the one to compromise both. And while she thought she was standing up for her version of standards, she ended up proving why those panels, and the very security they provided, were so necessary. For the neighborhood, the lesson was clear. Progress isn't always pretty to everyone, but it's essential. For Karen, the lesson came with a price tag, a reputation in ruins, and a community that no longer saw her as an enforcer, but as a liability.